Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, and good evening to you. Welcome to WeatherBrains, episode number 656. This is the pre-show. It's a magical time of the show. This is where we share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and we say really, really outrageous things. So the question is, Brian Peters, do you, sir, have anything outrageous on your mind?
Not a thing.
Come on, man.
Like, come on.
So,
it's just hot here.
It's hot. So I feel bad. You know, Brian is, it's going to be a rough show here tonight. It's going to be a fun show, though. So, Brian, here's the situation. Let me open up the other camera here, and you're going to see the lovely Aubrey.
There we go.
Bill Murray, Dr. John is back in the house.
Hey, look who we found. We found him.
And we're interrupting some really cool workshop back here because I'm talking like really loud. So, but that's okay. Bill says they invited us in here. They will do. So, and again, we're going early. For those that are figuring this out, I'll put this out on social media in just a second. We're going early this week. Typically, we start about 90 minutes from now, but we're going to do it early because Bill found out there's a 50-cent beer night at a Hooters down the street down here. So.
Brian told me about it.
Yeah, Brian. He says, but you told him about it, Brian. So that's the deal.
I've been there, Bill. They're waiting on you.
Brian, it's going to be a wild show, buddy. That's all I can say. Strap in.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's always a wild show from NWA.
So it might just be you, Brian, as a guest, and you're the show notes guy. And if you need to say anything, you chime in. I'm the guy that's going to have the headphones tonight. Yeah. So you got a question you want to ask, you need something to say, you jump in. All right. Brian, we're just the two outliers. The show's going to be carried by our friends over here to the left of me. So but we're gonna start this thing.
Why not? Let's go.
I feel sorry for the guy that's speaking behind us. By the way, we're at a Marriott in St. Louis at the National Weather Association annual meeting for those that are just tuning in here, and that's the situation. And they're actually having some type of session back here.
Ron.
Which we'll talk about that. Let's get this thing started. You know the deal. So this is cool. Bill gets to see how the sausage is made.
This is impressive.
So when I say turn on recorder number 1 and recorder number 2, that's what we do.
I thought you were like pushing like a tape recorder from radio.
Yeah, really. I thought you had a board and everything.
Radio.
Reel to
there
reel.
is no board here. We're doing. This is a program called Audio Hijack Pro. This is how the sausage is made here. And you have to have all this stuff in the right order. That's the audio chain for each channel. There's some processing in here. There's some noise reduction, and but this is coming off my mic, and this is coming off your mic down here. So
James is super fancy.
And you have to route all this stuff. It's kind of complicated, but it's okay. All right, so here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2. I'm really out of my closet, man. This is.
Did we have an abort on the launch? Was that an abort on the launch?
Yeah, we got to T-3, and we had to abort the launch. Here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You know, this is going to be a wild show because we're already laughing and the music has just started. This is WeatherBrains episode number 658. This is the weekly show that's all about weather. And this week we are on location in St. Louis, Missouri at the National Weather Association annual meeting. Most of the gang here, but Brian Peters, you are not with us. Somebody had to stay home.
Yeah. And wouldn't you know it, the weather behaved itself, so I could have gone anyway.
Yeah, you know, typically what happens when I take some time off this time of the year, there's a Category 4 or 5 hurricane. We have a rare August tornado outbreak. We have flash floods. Something happens. But so far, so good, right?
It's snowing in Yellowstone, James.
Yeah, there you go.
Is it really?
So Brian, how is the weather down in the deep south? We'll do weather round if we have time, but how is it down there?
Well, I would judge the percentage of coverage of showers today to be somewhere around 1%. And if you weren't in Lamar County, you didn't even see a shower. That was it.
Yep, that's what you call isolated.
Are you reading
right
lips?
There. Yeah.
And 94 was the high.
Wow. Okay.
Down there.
Now, I'm warning our guests, their mics are hot down there.
Oh,
so
they
see,
are.
while they're mocking you, Brian, their mics are turned
Reading
on there.
lips.
Yeah.
I can hear them, and I
can't hear
do
you,
believe in
Brian.
revenge.
Yeah, Brian says
Sign
he
language.
believes in revenge. So
But
fair
we
warning.
miss you, Brian. We do.
Oh yes, I know that.
We miss you, Brian.
Oh, yes, we
So,
do.
what we're going to do, we're just going to sit back and enjoy the show. We do this every year live at the NWA. For those that are here, Bill's here every year. Bill's like the grand poobah of this thing. So, ladies and gentlemen, for those that are watching by chance, we know I'm going to who's here.
Ooh, we're on the air.
I know.
We're official.
The floor belongs to you three.
Behave.
Well,
Dr. John is back. What,
that's the biggest news here
Exactly.
tonight, Dr. John. It's great to have you back. You've
You're like my family. I've missed you.
I
and
know.
wait just a minute. You can't hear this, but I can hear this. You know what song I'm playing right now. Dr. John from 1973. The song is called Right Place, Wrong Time. Having Dr. John makes me happy. Oh, yeah. All right.
Yeah, we've really missed you, John. What have you been up to for the past several months
I made
and
the
years?
decision, Bill, to actually back out of television. I'm not doing television anymore. So my time is completely filled as a consultant, and I'm actually making a living out of it, which is fantastic.
What's that like?
It's awesome to actually have money coming in.
Well, and you just got one of your kids off to college, and
2 days ago, my third child went off to school. There's one left in the house now.
well, the Span did a really good job on Saturday wearing the Swami hat. And the last time we saw you, John, you had the Swami hat, and you got so mad you never came back.
Well, that picture showed up everywhere, Bill.
Well, I mean, it's hard to cover up that hair. That is the best hair in the NWA. There's no question.
No,
It is
Very
real.
true.
no man
Very
should
true.
have hair like that. That's the hair of an angel.
I told you, it's chocolate milk and beer that does that.
That's what he said, James. Chocolate milk and beer is what does it.
Well, and by the way, we're going to send an invoice to Budweiser for their product placement
Yes.
and video shot back here.
This WeatherBrains brought to you by.
Scott, move that bottle till they pay us back there, will you?
You see the picture he's got.
Yeah, that hat sort of looks like a Jiffy Pop popcorn, from my childhood, John.
By the way,
so big.
Let me just say this. Our audio listeners are going to be furious at me because of this guy talking back here. So explain what's going on back here. This is not my fault. They added us.
No, we've been really excited to be a part of Greg Stumpf and his team's research operations Nexus, which is this event that is really becoming a big deal. What we have tonight are folks from different disciplines in meteorology, social science, all coming together here tonight to meet across the table and talk about ways that they can get research ideas into operation, and for operations people to to talk to the researchers about what their needs are. And of course, we're going to talk to Greg here in just a minute and talk about what they're doing. Some of the guests that are here tonight, they're going to bring them through. But I thought we'd take just a minute and talk about the conference so far. Aubrey, I didn't even know you were coming. You just appeared in a barbecue restaurant Saturday night.
I know.
But
You must not have been on the episode where I broke the news.
No, I must have missed that. So somehow.
Yeah, very, very excited to be here. And it's been a great conference so far. And I'm actually missing the fact that I missed last year. So we'll have to make it an annual tradition now.
I think you should have it put in your contract.
That's what I'm doing when I get home.
Well, and so we arrived. Scott and I arrived on Thursday and Friday, and we had this huge WeatherFest on Saturday at the St. Louis Science Center, and it was a huge success. We had 70 volunteers, 60 exhibitors, 17 large vehicles, 9 stage shows, including our very own James Spann, who was the Fred Astaire with Ginger Z as the Ginger Rogers of weather. They had those kids eating out of their hands. We worked really hard to get this stage show put together for James, because you don't want to ask some big star like this guy to come up here and just wing it. He threw that thing in the trash after the first show, and he looked like an eagle taking off with wings. And he and Ginger just had those kids eating out of their hands, and so it was a huge success. We raised nearly $15,000 for the National Weather Association Foundation, and it was just a huge day. Scott Martin, who's right over here, he's right off camera. He'll be
There he
in
is. Yes, the man.
Scott was the driving force behind this event. He produced the incredible document that we used for the gamification piece. James was like, "What the heck? Where did this come from?" He's like, "This is an incredible piece of stuff." And so, even Dr. Uccellini from the Weather Service came by and said, "This is huge." I heard from John Murphy that, this event was really big, and it's right in the National Weather Service's mission And so it really worked out. So, John, we get you there next time.
I was there 2 years ago.
You were. You never came back.
There in Norfolk.
Yeah.
But, your efforts
Yes.
are why this succeeded the way it did.
No, it was the efforts of a lot of people.
You were
And
the
I
grand
have so
poobah.
many people to thank on Wednesday when we hand the check over to the foundation.
That'd be
And
great.
starting with Scott. I've already thanked Scott. So, Aubrey, we have to get you here next
Yeah,
week.
and I was actually following along on Twitter as I was flying out here, and just the tweets were awesome. The crowds look awesome. You could tell there was just a huge presence there, and how many great activities there were there, not for the kids, but also for the adults too. And it looked like an awesome time.
And that's a great thing about having it in the Science Center. The kids can have a ball in the organic exhibits, and then the parents can enjoy. But we had some incredible, exhibits that were related to weather. The NSSL hot seat simulator was one of the most popular. What else was really huge? The flood model. The FEMA folks brought their immersed virtual reality flood program, and they loved that. What else was hot, Scott, that I'm missing?
The weather.
What was hot,
Yeah,
Scott?
the weather.
Weather was
Every
hot.
time I come to St. Louis, it's an excessive heat warning.
Actually, there's enough of a breeze to where it wasn't as bad as I was preparing myself for. I have to say, I was prepared to be completely miserable, and I have yet to be. Well, yesterday walking to and from the arch was actually not fun, but I wasn't completely miserable, so it hasn't been horrible.
Well, let's just say that the weather was really hot on Saturday, considering that when I drove in on Friday, the high temperature was only 68 with rain.
Yeah.
It topped out at 95.
So it's your fault. So when Scott and I were walking downtown today, he said, I don't think it's this hot. I don't think it, is as hot as it is in Birmingham. I said, Scott, it's 95 with a 75-degree dew point.
I guarantee it.
Plus, they told us it was in the 70s here last week, which
Yeah, that
just
was
made
just
us come.
calming.
Oh, that was horrible.
But I have to give a shout out to our friends at KMOV, Steve Templeton, the team over there. Of course, that's your people, James, Mike Murphy, and that crew. They started pushing this thing at the end of July, and they filled it up. We think we had 8,000 people there on
Awesome.
Saturday, and it
Awesome.
was really a result of their
Awesome.
promotion. So thank you for that, James. And again, and Fox, Chris Higgins is here tonight. Chris is his team was great. They had a big exhibit, but it was wonderful all around. But what about the conference so far, Dr. John? What's been your biggest takeaways?
Oh, well, for me, coming to this conference is to speak with the students. And so I was part of the conference on Sunday for the students, and I was given the honor of the keynote address on Sunday, which it's just right to my heart. I enjoy this so much, talking with students, giving them a perspective of my career, which was all over the place, but it has enabled me to experience a lot of different things. It's opened doors, great opportunities. We talked about television as a career. I mean, this guy over here is a legend, obviously.
Yep.
I never thought about television as a career, but the opportunity came down the road. I grabbed it. Wow, did that open a door?
And boy, did it ever. That was incredible. So any other big takeaways, John, so far from the annual meeting?
Well, we still got quite a bit of the meeting to go.
That's true. We're early still. We're just in the second quarter.
That's true.
We're not even to halftime yet.
I'm one of the prime movers of the meeting is here with us right now, Greg Stump. But I will say that the discussion this afternoon, this is the 25th anniversary
Yes.
Exactly.
of the Great Midwest Flood of '93. And I'm thinking 25 years has gone by.
And we're going to talk to Fred Glass in just a minute from the National Weather Service of St. Louis. I think Mark Fuchs, who's the service hydrologist, will even poke his head in.
Yeah,
He had some interesting things today.
The
We may even tell a
presentations were
few
great.
J.B. Elliott stories.
Oh.
Biggest takeaway so far, Aubrey, that you can think of?
Oh man, I had the privilege of working with some of the students last night, critiquing the student DVDs, which was awesome. But, learning for me myself, there have just been some really great presentations. Your National Weather Service in Birmingham, that stuff was awesome. Joe Loria, his presentation. And then who's the other guy this morning? They went back and confirmed a tornado that had been straight
John
line.
Gordon. Yeah, the famous John
that
Gordon.
was awesome. There have just been so many great presentations, and just learning from different places around the country, and you can take away different things for your region. And that's just some of the, you're having ideas on stories that I can take home, ideas on graphics. It's a wealth of information. It's like weather camp and you just go home so energized.
Yeah, it's the greatest weekend weather.
It
Well, we're
is.
really excited to be here tonight. And I hope we're not interrupting the great things that are going on behind us. But Greg Stumpf is research meteorologist at NSSL, and he is the founder and the director of this event tonight. Tell us exactly what the RON is, Greg.
Okay, and this time I finally made it on the air, which
I
is
know
great.
silly Google kept us from
I'm
getting
going
you
to
on.
So,
so,
um,
so you guys can huddle together a little bit.
Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Awesome.
The research
And I'll see you guys
operations-
later. Absolutely.
The Research Operations Nexus. This is the 5th time we've done this, and it is.
Come on in, Greg.
It was born from an idea we had about 6 years ago about how can we get in touch with folks who are actually doing the forecasting out in the field, who've had these great ideas to improve the way they do their forecasts, but it needed some research. It needed an outlet. It needed somebody with research knowledge and stuff like that to help move it along. And at the same time, we have a great bunch of researchers in the various universities and federal labs that are doing work that would really stand to benefit operational forecasters, but they don't have an outlet back to the other way. So what we're doing here is bridge building, relationship building, and trying to get folks from both camps, research and operations, to meet each other and to start hearing about each other's ideas and problems, and hopefully we'll get them started on a new journey toward a new project, new work that can be used to eventually help with forecast operations in the field.
So the event has already gotten so much notoriety, Greg, that it's going to be picked up at AMS, right?
Yes, we did one at AMS.
Okay, good.
In Austin back in January. We're doing it again in Phoenix, and because there's so many more people at the AMS meeting, we have to actually limit the attendance to the RON. We had about 100 people sign up for the AMS one. I'm looking around the room right now. We had 38 pre-registered. There are a lot more than 38 people out there. So we've had a lot of walk-ins. I think we're probably close to 60 or 70 people here.
That
at the
is
RON.
amazing. Yeah,
Yes.
the Crystal Ballroom here at the Marriott is full. James is off taking sunset pictures over here, I think. He's not even having to have shipped in tonight. He can just take them from here.
This is a beautiful setting too. This is probably the nicest RON venue we've had.
Well,
so far.
it's amazing for you to let us be a part of it.
Yes, absolutely.
This is really exciting. Talk about Ron Przybylinski. And that's why it's, the acronym is really appropriate.
And that
it works
acronym
out.
just happened serendipitously because we had been talking about having a research to operations event. We thought, well, we got to remember that there's O2R as well, operations to research. So, well, how can we just take the R and the O and turn it into an acronym? So what if we put an N on the end of that? Because we've been thinking about Ron Przybylinski, who had just passed away just a few months prior to that. And Harold Brooks chimed in and said, Nexus. And there was our name.
He's
right
so
there.
brilliant.
Research Operations Nexus, and it has stuck with us. Now, Ron Przybylinski, I first met him at the very beginning of my career, which was around 1989. And around 1992, he became one of the first science operations officers in the National Weather Service. There were about a half dozen of them that started at that time. Ron was somebody who was always driving down to visit Norman. So I interacted with him multiple times while he was there. And I just learned that this is the guy who's the quintessential Sioux. He knows what it meant to connect with researchers and bring that back to his home office, and also drive across the bridge in the other direction, giving us all these ideas of things that he's done. In fact, I can remember one of the first things he taught me, time height diagrams for tracking the evolution of mesocyclones, strength with height over time. And you could see things like descending mesocyclone cores and things like that. Just really interesting stuff. We got to first interact on our first project together back in 1992, when what was not yet known as a quasi-linear convective system tornado at the time, that's what it was, came right through the north side of Norman and went right over the old National Severe Storm Lab and National Weather Service forecast offices building while I was there. I watched the 100-mile-an-hour winds blowing horizontal outside, and it was quite exciting. And after it went through, just took a quick drive around, and there was damage all over North Basin in Norman, Oklahoma. And I knew that Ron had a great interest in bow echo meteorology.
Right.
And I asked him, I said, hey, check out this event. We got really lucky too, because we got both of the NSSL research radars were on. So we've got dual Doppler coverage of this thing. So we actually did a dual Doppler analysis of the first QLCS tornado. First time that was ever done. I think at the time we called them BLVs, boundary layer vortex, which is all kinds of not right. But it's just blossomed from there. That was one of his big passions. Another big passion, of course, was that he was very meticulous doing storm damage surveys. And I've had a number of different mentors through my life with regard to doing damage surveys, but Ron was one that helped you really pick out these events that would have never even been noticed if you hadn't been closely paying attention to the radar at the same time. And even to this day, I've seen these little swirls on radar that aren't warned, aren't tornado warned. They probably are not worthy of a tornado warning because they're not going to cause that much damage. And just out of curiosity, the next day I go down to where that was, and hey, look, there's a fence blown over. There's a couple tree limbs down, and only a few yards wide.
Yes.
And a couple miles long.
Yes.
This was one of those things, an EF0, but still. And then I think about Ron all the time when I do stuff like that. He was also very instrumental in our hazardous weather test bed. Our early days, the warning program of the test bed, he was a frequent guest in the late aughts. I guess that's what that decade is called.
Yeah.
He participated in our first probabilistic hazard information experiment that we did back then. And of course, as Ron always was, he was very instrumental in providing advice and guidance along the way with that. So I owe a lot to Ron. He invited me up here a couple times to give talks. So I was able to tour the office and meet with folks in the St. Louis area several times. So he was a great guy.
Well, I think I heard his spirit rattling around today in the general meetings over here, because you can see that evidence. And especially, we'll talk to Pat Spodeman in a minute, but I think I saw a little Ron when Pat was giving his talk today, how he analyzed that tornado that hit in his CWA. You know, I could just sense a little Ron in that talk today.
Whether Ron knew it or not, he was a mentor to many people, both in operations and in research. So
I thought the talk that Kevin Scow from the National Weather Service in Topeka gave today, about TDS signatures and their evolution and how important it is, to watch that evolution. Comment on that, Greg, if you saw that talk.
But I know about another one of Kevin's projects, and Ron would have absolutely loved what Kevin did when he was still in Iowa. He analyzed the quasi-linear convective system bow echo that went through there. And although the tornadoes were much weaker by strength standards, in terms of numbers, it rivals some of the greatest outbreaks in the United States history. He found swirls everywhere in the cornfields and things like that. Most of them were corroborated by radar data. So, mostly EF0s and some EF1s, but who knows how many of these things are happening out there. Now that we see them, now that we have the resources to observe them, we're learning so much. And all that started with Ron Przybylinski in the 80s.
So what do you think Ron would have thought about that presentation about the damage surveys with the drone today?
Oh, he would have loved that. He was, get me a drone.
Yeah, right. I can imagine. The Weather Service can't have drones
I wasn't
at their
aware of that
offices.
until today.
Is that right?
So, yeah, they have to be.
I wasn't aware of that either.
Yeah, I guess they have to be.
They have to use an emergency managers or someone else. So
I don't know if it's a privacy issue or what.
But I mean, the analysis, and we'll talk to Pat about this in a minute, but of that 40-acre plot, I don't know how many pictures that drone took, but it was probably upwards of 300. And it mapped every inch of that. He could track every root ball, the fall of every, and then layer them and decide on what order they fell in.
If you've ever done a damage survey and you've been able to fly over these events, not back in my mind, there's always, if I only had a drone, this would be so much easier and less expensive.
I've got an interesting story. Back in the mid-90s, I believe it was, we had reports of some damage in southern McLean County near Norman, but in an area we just couldn't access. And a friend of mine who was a single engine pilot, just learning how to fly, he just got his rating to fly solo. He said, let's take the plane up and take a look. We're flying over the area. We're trying to, okay, it looks like there might be some damage down there. Can you bring the plane a little lower? And he starts going down, and the altitude alert goes up. So, what's the minimum altitude again? He goes 400 feet. He said, we're at 130.
Oh my goodness.
Just came right back. But guess what? There was a tornado.
Wow.
At least we saw the damage from the plane. So.
Well, it's made me think of some J.B. Elliott stories, John. You know, he shared so many good ones, but he talked about after the April 3rd, 1974 tornado outbreak, taking Bob Ferry, who was the MIC at the National Weather Service, or back then, I guess the Weather Forecast Office in Birmingham, taking him up, and he got airsick. And apparently Mr. Ferry had a couple of hamburgers before they got on the plane, and while JB was hanging out of the plane with his camera, Mr. Ferry was being ill in the back seat. So
anyway, I'm going to have to run.
Okay. You get send us some more whatever you want to talk to over.
I was looking for Jim Civic King, and I might send him over here as well.
That'd be great. And thank you for Saturday. You were manning the tornado model, Greg, and I know the kids were amazed. Outside of trying to climb in there.
The kids were climbing in there.
Thank you so much for having us here tonight.
You bet. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Greg.
All right. Well, outstanding. So, All right. Get our friend in here. All right, James.
Give me that microphone.
Here you go.
We need a good engineer.
I'm stuck here. There we go.
There we go.
Okay.
All right.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to huddle back here in the back. So this is Elise
Don't
Smith.
touch him. Don't touch him.
Yeah. We only have one camera, guys. Sorry. So this is Elise Smith, and I'm embarrassed. I'm thoroughly embarrassed. Remember, we did that. Well, no, I'm not embarrassed. I'm a little embarrassed. So we did this show in Oklahoma City. I don't know if you were there, John. This was in.
Yeah, you and I were the academic side of the thing. I don't know about academic, but the NPR side of it.
Yeah,
right.
Yep. I think it was like
Chuck
3 years
Dossel
ago.
And James were the.
We were way up top, right?
Right. We had. Everybody was there.
Yeah.
You guys were down on the NPR side. Yeah, right. The morning zoo crew, right. Chuck Doswell and James Spann. You should never get us together.
Yeah, that's a mistake.
This poor, really, she was driven, she was motivated. You could see the excitement in her eyes of this career.
They snuffed that right out.
She came up, and then we just took her down. I mean, I was embarrassed. We challenged her on the future of television, forecasting, and all this stuff. But she persevered, and here she is. She's back 3 years later. This is Elise Smith.
Hey, Elise.
So, Elise, you are now doing television weather. Tell us how far you've come since that fateful NWA, National Weather Association
all that
meeting.
Disadvantage you had to overcome.
Well, I was at that conference mainly to network because I was a junior going into my senior year, and I wanted an internship in broadcast meteorology. And I didn't want just any internship. I wanted the best internship. So then when I heard you guys were going live from the conference, and
I feel so bad now. I'm just going down the tubes.
Well, but it's a good thing. It's nice to have a balance of people telling you it's going to be hard. You need to work hard, be the best you can be, but then also to find positive mentors who will also build you up and inspire you.
Yeah, that wasn't James.
And that's what that's what John Scala does. That's your heart, right, John? Is encouraging young people.
Very much.
Yep. But I went on WeatherBrains, and then the funny thing is, after that episode, I then applied to James's internship at ABC 3340 and showed up the next summer as his new intern.
I've seen this young woman before somewhere. Yeah. Wait a minute, she's the one we berated on this show. 1 minute so tell us about your career. I mean, tell us about it. This is good.
So I went into my senior year with a really great internship under my belt. Then during my senior year...
First off, we should mention you're from Valparaiso University.
I am from Valparaiso University.
Valpo.
Go Valpo.
Got Ginger Z written all over.
Now I remember.
Today's show.
I remember.
Yep, student at Valpo. So then my senior year at Valpo, hop, skip, and a jump away from Chicago, interned with Tom Skilling for a semester.
My goodness.
So you did the worst, and now you're with the best.
She went from the bottom to the top.
No. But got 2 great internships, worked really hard, and found a full-time meteorology job within broadcasting in Jefferson City, Missouri.
Wow.
And I've been in the industry now for about a year and a month. So.
And I will not say this because you're sitting here. She is extremely talented.
Thank
she
you.
Did learn
Thank
from
you.
one.
No, it has nothing to do with
Well, it does. It
that,
has a
but
lot to do with it.
Her academics are excellent. She's a brilliant scientist. Her on-air performance is amazing for this youth. I mean, I wish I was this good when I was your age, but you have this incredibly bright future. But what you are is an encouragement to all these other young women
Exactly.
that are
Yes.
in college
Example.
that want to do what you're doing.
Yes.
So what would you say to them? Let's say there's a freshman coming in,
Yep.
majoring in meteorology, scared to death. What would you say?
I would say just work hard and stay inspired, stay motivated, find things that interest you, you know, and stay open. I remember my sophomore year of college, I was going through a rough patch with broadcasting, wasn't sure if I liked it, or I've had another interest in tropical meteorology. And I just stayed open, learned about many different types of weather, winter weather, tropical weather, you know, climate. But I always found that passion in public speaking and being able to connect to people and just tell them about the weather and talk about the weather and give a forecast. And it takes a lot of hard work. I got rejected applying to internships the summer before I got the one with James Spann. So I had to go through that. I was actually in my class, one of the only people who didn't get an internship in the broadcasting sector. So I see all my friends out interning across the country, you know, and starting their career, building connections. And I didn't have that yet, but I didn't let that set me back. I just worked harder and networked and just kept going. And you just, you know, whenever there's a roadblock, you got to push past it and stay positive.
Is critical.
It really is, because you will need that going into the job field. Then I have a friend who just got a new job within broadcasting. The news director told them that they had 60 applicants for that one job.
Yeah, that's what John Gordon was saying yesterday.
Yeah.
He was running basically a mock interview for the students late last evening. And he said, I got 180 applicants on my desk. Why should I choose you? And you got to have an answer.
And there is one piece of advice. I went to the conference as a junior, to the NWA conference, and I feel like that really helped because I did just get rejected to a bunch of internships prior. And I went around asking broadcasters, like, what will make me stand out? What will help me in the future? And I don't know if it was either Alan Seals or maybe Eric Fisher or even Nick Walker. I talked to a bunch of people, but they said, get out of your comfort zone, go to an internship in the part of the country you've never been to. You're probably not going to get paid because most broadcasting internships are unpaid. So make sure you can stay with family or friends or whatever the case may be, and just be there for the summer, because in truth, that's what it's going to be like when you take a job in the broadcasting industry. You're going to be applying to jobs across the country. You're going to have to pick up and move, go away from your family, go away from your friends who you spent 4 years with in your undergrad, and start from scratch. So I'd never been to Alabama, Georgia, Bible Belt, anything like that before.
The only thing she knew is to stay away from Brian Peters. Stay away from that man, the man that looks like Colonel Sanders.
No, but yeah, so I created a list then my junior year before applying. And I had family and friends in New York, in Lincoln, Nebraska, Birmingham was another place, and Columbus. So that's where I sent all my applications to, sent, my resume, my reel, contacted the chief meteorologist directly about could I intern here? I don't need to be paid. I just need to get experience.
That's the kind of initiative that lands jobs. There's no question.
Yep.
Well, and that's important advice. Come here. Students need to come here.
Yes.
And then don't sit as a herd together. Get out and talk. Because I told a lot of the kids in the mentoring yesterday, most of us are introverts. For a student to come up and ask questions or to say things like you said, what can I do to improve my chances? You're already doing it right there.
Yeah. And it is intimidating, like to walk up to some of these people, like for instance, James Spann, to walk up and introduce yourself.
And James Spann and Chuck Dawes will run.
No, but to walk up and just say, hey, I'm Elise. I want to be in your shoes one day. What can I do? It is intimidating, but you will feel better for doing so than not.
And
Well,
do
it was-
it more than once. Go back.
Yep.
Go back a couple of times so that
Right.
I remember your name.
Elise, thank you.
Yes,
You're the best.
thank you.
You've done well.
Thank
and
you.
your career's just starting. We're going to
It
be watching.
is.
We'll see you on the Today Show anytime.
Oh boy. Thank
you.
you.
We got Kevin Laws here.
Yeah.
Kevin Laws of the National Weather Service in Birmingham.
Pat and Fred in too.
Okay, we'll do that next. Here we go.
Come here, Kevin.
Here we go. Have a seat.
Thank you, sir.
Here we go.
Dr.
Well, I
Scala,
have to-
welcome. Triumphant
pleasure.
return back
Pleasure.
to WeatherBrains.
Well, Kevin, we really enjoyed your talk yesterday. Of course, we've heard it many times in our market, and I said from the podium today, we have benefited in Birmingham as one of your customers immensely from your hard work. So tell the story about how Polygonology came to be and why we have it and what it's done.
Yeah, well, Bill, as you know, everything stems from April 27th. And after that, we had to take a long, hard look at the way we were doing business. And three things really came from that, Polygonology being one of them. And that's really the way we draw and shape polygons, because it's taken a while, the technology to catch up and weather radio still sounds over the entire county. And as you know well in our market, Alabama is probably the world capital of nocturnal tornadoes. So we waking people up at night and things. And so we had to sort of adjust the way we draw the polygons and shape them. So we sort of warn people a little less. And really a lot of that came from Dr. Myers' group, social science group, saying that people felt like they were being warned a lot more than they really were. So,
yeah, and so other things came out of that too, though. Your office, how you arranged your office changed in terms of staffing and things like that.
Sure.
How you approach that?
Yeah, well, we took a long, hard look at how we were doing that. One critical error we were making was that we were taking new folks, some of our rookies, and we were putting them on the warning desk during these marginal situations. Well, it turns out the marginal ones are the hardest ones to warn for. And I think some new folks, interns and recent graduates from the radar school, they may be a little apprehensive to not warn. So in other words, they tend to overwarn a little bit because they don't want to miss anything. I understand that, of course. But it shakes their confidence because they end up, driving up a high false alarm rate. And so we had to reevaluate the way we really looked at that. So we mix it up a lot more now. We let people play to their strengths. And we can sort of like a baseball team. It's like if we go to the baseball game tomorrow night and Molina's pitching, we're probably all going to leave instead of playing catcher. But the key is he catches in the preseason, during the regular season, and in the playoffs too.
Right.
So, and that's the way we look at it now. So,
and also you changed the science behind the process and emphasized it so you could create, the scenarios that, would lead to a warning and when not to warn, which is an important decision.
I think we did something very unique there, and that is we compared our warning performance, to the actual science as well. And I don't think that's ever been done. And everybody compares the warning environment to, everybody compares the tornado environment to actual tornadoes. We took it a step further and applied it to our warning performance as well. And what we found is some gaps in there that we could close.
I never
up.
saw that before. That plot that you showed today.
Right.
That was a sealer for me.
I think one of these days I'll take a sabbatical. Maybe I'll write all this stuff up. But we get a little bit too much weather down there where we are to sit down and take any time doing that. So.
Exactly. Well, Kevin, we appreciate you joining us tonight. Anything else going on we need to know about?
Not too much right now. We've got a lot of new folks in our office, so and that's good. The turnover's been good, so we're back to full staffing on the forecast side.
That's
so that's
great.
always a positive. So just looking forward to some more weather now in the fall.
Well, thank you again. It's been great spending time with you here. And are you here all week?
I'm here all week. So
Good
did
deal.
WeatherFest on Saturday. It was great. Had a great turnout.
Oh,
Enjoyed it so
exactly.
much.
Kevin ran the Reading the Radar, display. That was a permanent exhibition at the Science Center when they roll out. And I told the TV folks and all the folks at the Science Center, I said, this is one of the preeminent radar warning meteorologists in the country that are going to be here. And it was fantastic.
A lot of fun. Probably talked about maybe 6,000 kids, and so we had a lot of interest in meteorology. A lot of folks came out, and I asked them. I said, "Are you here for the Science Center or for the weather?" And a good majority of them was like, "We're here for the weather today." So
it's weather. There's no question about it, but we probably created a few meteorologists on Saturday.
No doubt about that.
Well, thank you so
Great to
much,
see you folks.
Kevin
Yeah.
Laws,
Thank you.
the Science and
Thank you.
Operations Officer at the National Weather Service in Birmingham. Have a great rest of the conference. I'll see you around.
Take care.
All right, we want to bring in Pat Spoden and Fred Glass here from the. Well, we're gonna bring him in first. Yeah, I got to get Fred over here because we got to talk about the flood.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk.
Fred, this of course is the 25th anniversary Jim, come on in and join us. Poke your head in here. First, I have to introduce.
Yeah, bring a chair right in here.
Yeah, Jim King is the WCM here at the National Weather Service.
The Sue.
Why can't I get that right?
Kevin's the WCM.
I knew that.
Plans. Yeah. Let's not put
Kevin
two jobs
Deitch is the WCM,
Yeah.
but Jim was instrumental in making the WeatherFest a huge success this week. Jim, thank you for all your efforts.
I appreciate you making the connection and getting us involved. It was great.
Well, Sally Pavlo Johnson, the MIC,
Yeah.
the entire team.
Yeah.
It's just been fantastic, and of course, it's an honor to meet you, Fred.
Well, thanks very much.
And you know, the cool thing today was, you know, we've a lot of us lived, you know, vicariously through what was going on in the Midwest in the summer of 1993. But until you stop and talk about the impacts and put them on a screen like you did today, you don't understand how major that event was and how disruptive it was to the American economy.
No, that's true. And in fact, it was my third year in St. Louis. I had arrived into St. Louis in November of 1990. It was my first real exposure to something extreme and hot, such impactful as that. And to be honest with you, even though I was forecasting it day after day, putting out warnings day after day, chasing flood stages, we'd no sooner get a forecast in for a river. By the time we got it actually in the office, the river level had already exceeded the forecast. That was going on day after day. The naming of MCSs, going out and helping sandbag. I don't think I really saw truly how impactful it was, or maybe it's because I'm 25 years older. When I was going back and when I was putting this presentation together, it impacted me a completely different way. I got very emotional looking at photographs and putting the whole thing together and just realizing then truly how many lives had been touched and the great sense of community and spirit of the people. I mean, there were countless stories and pictures of people coming together and building up levees. And despite the fact that maybe the levee might break 12 or 24 hours later, them moving to another spot and working on another levee over and over. So it was hugely impactful. I don't think many people really understand how impactful it was, but the spirit of the people, it was unending, and they kept fighting and fighting. And here we are 25 years later, and I hope we've learned a lot of lessons from that.
And I hope it never happens again. But we've come a long way in river forecasting. Mark Fuchs, the service hydrologist, gave a very interesting talk today right behind you to talk about some of those improvements that have happened in the past 25 years.
Right. Well, you know, one of the things, like I said, I clearly remember is first of all, our river forecasts, they only went out 72 hours or 3 days. So they didn't go out very far. They didn't incorporate any QPF into them at all.
That's the forecast precipitation.
Yeah. I'm sorry. The forecast precipitation, none of that went into the models at all.
You were just talking to just cooperative observers and METARs, and
right.
That's all you had.
And it was, these were observations that came in just once a day. And again, the models, we just ran them once a day, and out came the forecast. And many times you would get the forecast in and it would already be incorrect, and they'd have to completely rerun the model. The levee breaks were a big problem because they didn't know how to handle the rerouting of the water and how it was going to impact the flood forecast. Things have changed considerably since 1993. First of all, our forecasts now go out many days in advance. They go out probably a lot further than most of the public actually sees them. And that's both good and bad because like anything, there's a certain amount of skill involved in any kind of forecasting. The sources of data that go into it, we have much more data that goes into it. We still have all the cooperative observers, and we have the regular rainfall observations, but there's other things that go into it, like radar observations and radar estimates. I'm not sure how much satellite's being used anymore, but the advancements in river forecasting themselves has helped considerably too. And something that was talked a little bit about today is the ensembles that can be run off of the models. And a great example of that is Jim and I were working back in 2015 in December, and here we were being faced with a monumental rainfall event over the Merrimack Basin, which is not a very big basin, and it's just south of St. Louis, and we were forecasting 8 to 10 inches of rainfall in that basin over the course of about 3 to 4 days. And we had really things like the cooperative SIPS analogs, to look at.
Comparing it to 1982, which was the flood of record for the Merrimack.
Wow. Right. The December of 82 flood, it was December 82, right? Flood of record. They were comparing it to that. That was the top analog. If we looked at the rainfall amounts, they were all showing on these ensemble hydrographs major to record river levels. And we were messaging that before even a drop of rain had fallen, that we were going to see major to historic river flooding and flash flooding. And that just shows you how things have changed over what then was just 23 years. And we continue to make advancements. Now we have the new water center and the new model, and it'll be interesting to see how things evolved in the next 5 to 10 years and further down the line.
It was interesting to see Mark talk about how they got data back then, because I remember J.B. Elliott telling a story about having to interrogate the river gauges, by telephone at night. They would dial in and use the punch tones or whatever to get the data back. And I think he had a picture of that today.
Yeah, the larks, I think, is what they're talking about. Yeah.
But JB said he called one night and he dialed the wrong number, being tired or whatever. And he got some lady, about 3 o'clock in the morning, and she said, "Hello." And he said he was kind of punch drunk after a long night, and he said, "Lady, are you my river gauge?" And she leaned over to her husband and said, "Honey, are we a river gauge?" And he said, "No, hang up on him."
Bill, I was mentioning to Fred earlier that his talk brought back memories for me as well. 25 years ago, I was in North Dakota for a field project.
Wow.
So I was running a NASA two-dimensional cloud model as a forecast tool. And then what we would do is get in the aircraft and fly through the storms in the afternoon, see how that matched up against the model. Well, we were stationed in Bismarck, and it was one storm after another to the point where we actually had to stop operations. We had too much data. There were too many storms.
And that's what really led to the flood, right? The pattern was very anomalous. And
that's correct. There was a number of things contributed. One of the big ones was just as we headed into the spring of 93, we had very wet, saturated soils. And that came about from a real wet fall and heading into winter. The fall was really the period. It was exceptionally wet. Just across Missouri, we were heading into October, and we were in some places 8 or more inches below normal in rainfall. And we finished off November above normal. So that shows you how much. There were 10 to 14 inches of rain that fell over good portions of the mid-Mississippi Valley in November. And that above normal rainfall continued all throughout the wintertime. And then we had above normal snowfall. So we had snow melt, we had above average precipitation. So as we were heading into late February and March, the ground was just loaded with water. So like I said, the stage was set. And then we got this pattern that set up. It started setting up in June, and it persisted through July into August, where we had this persistent, strong zonal jet stream. We had disturbances tracking in that, which led to surface cyclones forming. And then this, because of where that was set up, we had this wavering kind of quasi-stationary boundary. It just basically wavered back and forth over about a 200-mile north-south area. And then, again, going back to the anomalous circulation, that anomalous circulation just wasn't at the jet stream level. It was through the entire depth of the troposphere. We had real strong southerly flow and low-level jet bringing copious moisture northward, and all these things just came into coexistence across the upper Mississippi and the Missouri River Basin, and it was repetitive thunderstorm complexes, MCSs, day after day after day, and especially that period from about mid-June through July. 27 of the 31 days in July, there was measurable rainfall of an inch or greater in the basin.
Wow.
And
several days with more than 2 inches and several days with 6 inches.
That's correct. In June and July, there were 15 different what we would call extreme heavy rainfall events of 6 inches or greater. And 6 inches was just an arbitrary threshold. Many of these were producing 7, 8, 10, 11, 12 inches of rainfall. And not only, again, did they contribute to large quantities of runoff into the river system, but localized flash flooding that was deadly.
Wow. And so, how did this compare to the 1927 flood? Have you ever looked at that?
You know, I haven't really looked a lot back about the 27 flood. Have you, Jim, at all?
I have. The 1927 flood was really focused from Cairo, Illinois,
southward. Okay.
Yeah, and it really affected the Delta region. And this was mostly focused north of that area. So there was a lot of lessons learned from 27, but there was also obviously a lot of lessons learned from 93 as well.
So talk about Ron for a minute. Fred, you obviously got to work with him a long time, and we're here to honor him tonight while we work.
Sure. I had the great pleasure of meeting Ron in 1990 at the Severe Local Storms Conference. It was my very first conference. Dr. Ciullini was my boss. He let me go out to the conference and present my very first paper. It was kind of exciting going out there. There was a handful of us from, I was working at NMC, which is what NSEP is right now in the Met Ops division. And I went out there and I was actually given a presentation on a big heavy rainfall event that had occurred in the mid-Atlantic region. It had also produced severe weather, and it had a couple jet streaks. Of course, there was some spin on that.
I wonder where that came from.
Working with Louis, and I had some very cool output that was from GEMPAC that showed the geostrophic circulations. And I had met Ron. Dr. Jim Moore at the time introduced me to Ron, and Ron just thought these were the coolest things, these cross sections. So he was wondering, hey, can you get me some of those? Can you get me some of those? So I actually just ran across a letter that I had written to Ron where I had generated all these cross section diagrams for, I believe it was an Allendale tornado that had occurred. And I had sent to Ron, and that was my really first meeting with Ron and my first connection. Just a fantastic guy, right off the very bat. Seemed like he had known you for years. Ron was already been in the Weather Service a long time. He told me then his desire was to go to St. Louis and become the Sioux. And I had just gotten the position of moving laterally from NMC to St. Louis as a general forecaster. So I was excited. Here was this guy who just reeked of passion of meteorology. I mean, passion it flowed out of him, and it excited me greatly. It's, oh my God, I can't wait to work with a person like this. And sure enough, I got there in November of 90, and Ron got there in January of 91, and worked alongside of Ron for many years. He was my mentor. I learned so much from him in many aspects: how to conduct operational research, radar interrogation, storm structure, storm surveying techniques, how to cook the proper corn on a barbecue. I also taught him how to make the proper salsa as well. Just a fantastic guy. There's probably hardly a day that goes by that I don't miss him. So
I think we hear his spirit clinking around and all these things we're doing.
Yeah,
around here.
I said before, he had this indescribable laugh, and I occasionally just kind of hear that in my head every now and then. It was a laugh of happiness. That's the best way to describe it. He was just a great guy, and Ron was an absolute workaholic. We always kidded that he was married to his job, because the man would come in at 7:30 to 8 o'clock in the morning, and he would still be there when the midnight shift came on later that night, with his little light on in his table. And it's like, it was kind of funny. It was almost if Ron wasn't there, there was something going on. Is that Ron okay? But yeah, he would be there like 1 o'clock, and then he'd turn around and do it all over again.
Amazing.
Yeah, he did all 3 shifts, the day shift, the evening shift, the mid shift. So, I mean, connection with the forecasters. I've never seen somebody that was so dedicated to his work. and he really was just an excellent individual, just a great person. He's always in the moment. He'd give you his undivided attention. He could be in the middle of doing something really important, but he would stop and he'd focus on you and give you his attention. And I just admired that.
Well, I'm really sad that I didn't get to meet him, but I feel like I know him after meeting all the people who he's influenced. Jim, talk real quickly about the speaker series. You know, you got to run for. Thank you for being here.
Welcome.
This has been quite an honor to have you here tonight. Jim, talk about the speaker series Saturday. That was amazing what you put together.
Yeah.
Leading off with Dr. Harold Brooks.
Yeah, we had Harold Brooks. We had Greg Carbon. We had Fred give a talk on a couple of the really historic hailstorms that we had in St. Louis. It was a line. It was a good lineup. I mean, I enjoyed myself watching all the talks. We had quite a few people come in and take part, so it was great.
That's outstanding. So, Jim, how long have you been in St. Louis?
I got here in 2003.
Wow.
Yeah, so I've been here for 15 years. My first assignment was in Marquette, Michigan. We had 205 inches of snow the first year I was there.
Goodness.
Yeah, and my wife said, we got to get out of here. So I said, yes, ma'am. But yeah, the lake effect up there was just amazing. Great office, though. Beautiful, beautiful country up there. So.
Well, this is truly mid-America right here.
Yep.
Some great folks in this town.
Yep.
And we thank you for being a part of all this with us.
Yeah. Well,
hopefully we'll get to do it again.
Yes, I hope so. Definitely.
If there's anything we can do for you or anything you see you want to do with us, we're game for it.
All right, sounds great. Well, thanks, guys.
Thank you, Jim.
Yep.
That's awesome. Jim King from the National Weather Service in St. Louis. Scott, slide in here for a second.
Slide in, Scott.
We haven't. We'll need to get Bruce in here too in a minute. We didn't get you much on camera, Scott, but you and I get to work together on a daily basis with Alabama WX in Birmingham. You're a late, early career professional. You came into meteorology late. This is, your second NWA, I guess. Is that right?
That's right.
That's right. So, but you've thrown yourself in headlong and you've gotten involved, and you've been a part of everything we've done from the WeatherFests and all of this. Talk about your takeaways this week. I know we've already named several good ones, but anything that you've got that you want to share?
Well, I will say this, that we have found out that the students here at STU are outstanding hard workers. And
you can see little Dr. Chuck Graves in all of them, can't you?
Yeah, definitely. But, every single one of them.
And the University of Missouri, too.
That's true. Yeah, Missouri students as well.
Dr. Marcus.
Cross-pollination going on there.
There really is.
And everybody that was a volunteer, we had 100% turnout with volunteers. And, that's never happened since we
Well, it's one thing to
this.
show up. It's another thing to come and work your tails off from 7:30 on Saturday morning till 5:30 when the bus pulls out.
And the thing was, with 8,000 people,
it never stopped.
Yeah, you couldn't help but. I mean, working the show with Span and Ginger Z, I mean, it was packed every time. And then to go back and forth to see Nick Walker's show and then work the WeatherBrains table while James was doing his speech at the speaker series. I mean, we had a constant flow of people coming by the table, and then it all really got crazy when Fred Bird and Louie showed up.
Goodness. They love their Cardinals and their Blues in St. Louis, that's for sure. But to see the three them, Fred Bird, Louie, and Allie,
right,
who was fantastic.
Oh, Allie was awesome.
We had a local National Weather Service team member who was playing Allie. And, to see those kids' faces light up when that crew of mascots came around was just spectacular. So,
and to see their eyes light up when I was doing the WeatherBrains table, it was had several kids come by, and I got to tell them, I said, "Hey, I just heard Fred Bird just showed up."
Yeah,
and they're like, "Where is he? Where is he?" And I was like,
"That's right,
upstairs." And then they were like, "Come on, Mom, come on, Dad, we got to go, we got to go." And so it was really awesome to see everybody getting in and interacting with each exhibitor and with each person that we had there.
Well, thank you for all your hard work. This thing could not have come off without your intense dedication and incredible talents, both meteorologically and in graphics. Because you have an amazing skill set. Scott, and somebody's going to take you and make you a wealthy meteorologist here very soon. It won't be with me and James, that's for sure, but we appreciate all your hard work. So thank you for being here tonight. Thanks for being my bodyguard on the mean streets down here in St. Louis.
Hey, you still got what? One more day?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, good. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Scott. And you're helping us out over here. We appreciate that. I've got some more special guests coming in. Someone that we haven't had in a long, long time, Dr. Pam Heinzelman. It's been way too long, Pam. And Dr. Chuck Grace. We were just using your name in vain, Dr. Grace, because it was almost like I could just wish it to Chuck and it would happen between SLU. Scott was just bragging on the students from your school and from the University of Missouri, you and Dr. Pat Market.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a good experience for them, and I'm glad they took advantage of the opportunity.
Well, it's like I was saying, Chuck. They didn't just take advantage; they took over. The kids were amazing. I mean, you would think they would just come and kind of stand in the corner somewhere, but no, they were in people's faces. Like talking to them and really what can I do next. So you're raising them right here at SLU.
Well, we try. We don't always succeed, but we try.
So this started, for you and I in December over a dinner at Favazza's.
Yeah, I still remember that dinner. That's one of my favorite places in town.
It was. It is an incredible place on the hill.
It is.
So any takeaways so far from the annual meeting or the WeatherFest that strike you?
Well, this was my first time at the WeatherFest, and I was amazed at first the number of volunteers that you guys put together and organized.
Thanks to you.
We had a small part, but yeah, it was amazing. And as we got to the end of the day, it was a long day, no doubt about it. But I didn't see a grumpy face in the bunch. They were all still happy. My feet were screaming.
Yeah, 19,000 steps later. Yeah, that's nothing for Pam, but for me, 19,000 steps is a lot.
But that was amazing. And then the other thing that floored me was the constant people coming in. I mean, it was 2:00 in the afternoon, and I thought, okay, numbers are going to start winding down. There's not going to be anybody around, and they kept coming in. It was amazing. If it's like that all the time, I can't imagine why people don't volunteer. It's such a satisfying experience.
Well, really we want to invite everyone to help. Everybody that's in the Weather Enterprise that hears this, we've got a job for you. Because this thing just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And for Dr. Uccellini to come up to me today and say, Bill, I heard from John Murphy, that this event was really huge. And I told him, thank you for allowing all the National Weather Service volunteers that were here, because they manned exhibits and they were experts in every area. And it really made for a great day.
It really was. It was a lot of fun.
Well, thank you. And you're an inspiration to us.
But you're amazingly organized.
I don't know about that. Scott would tell you otherwise.
Because we had the conversation, and we talked about people that might want to get involved in the WeatherFest, and I actually ended up calling a couple of people. And they go, "Oh, I've already talked to Bill."
Oh Lord!
So that was amazing. You did a wonderful job.
Well, we had a tremendous number of people that did a great job. So you were one of those. Thank you. Dr. Pam, it's been a long time. It's been too many years. So congratulations on your new position. Tell us about that.
Yes. This past Monday, I started my job as Division Chief for Forecast Research and Development Division at the National Severe Storms Laboratory.
Congratulations.
So it's very exciting.
What a big deal.
Very exciting.
So what all does that entail?
So that entails supervising other employees at the lab. But I think more importantly, it also entails producing a vision for the group and, making sure that we're looking outward in terms of the technologies that are coming down the pipeline, what the possibilities maybe with the science that's coming down the pipeline, and making sure that, everyone in the group has the opportunity to work to their full potential and to have a big impact on not only the research and the science, but the transfer of that research and science to our customers, one of which is the National Weather Service, and of course the whole, United States, because we are a federal lab.
So you're still working on one on forecasts, I suppose.
I am.
So tell us the status of that. That's an amazing project and going to be increasingly important as we go through time.
Yeah. Warn-on Forecast has made some big strides in the last 2 years, in particular because we now have a prototype system that we can share with the community. And we've run it during the spring and early summer. The past 2 years, this year we actually went into July for the first time. And it has been evaluated within test beds, within the Norman office, within the Topeka, Kansas office, within the Storm Prediction Center, within FAIR, which is the flash flood experiment at the WPC, and within the WPC itself. So we're really starting to reach out, and we want to hear from the users, what is working well, how might you actually use this in your environment, what things do we need to do to the interface to make it more accessible, what kind of fields do you want to see that you aren't seeing, what are the strengths and limitations in terms of modes of convection and the threats that we're attempting to forecast with the system.
So how does it work, Pam? How does Warn-on Forecast work, and what does it tell the forecaster?
Okay, so
just a broad question.
A little bit.
What is this Warn-on Forecast thing?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, we'll back it up. So the concept of Warn-on Forecast is to produce a model forecast, an ensemble of forecasts, and to do that over a domain where the threats are most impactful. So currently the model is, say you're working with the Storm Prediction Center, and they say, today we have a moderate outlook, over some region in the United States. So then we would place the domain there. We would run our ensemble system there, and we have 18 members in that system, and it's a convective allowing model. We produce output every 5 minutes. We do data assimilation every 15 minutes.
You need some hefty computer power.
Yeah. And we run it usually every 30 minutes. So we have a new forecast that's being run every 30 minutes. So we can look for things like consistency in the forecast, how are trends changing in the forecast. Oftentimes, it's our earlier forecast to the later forecast. It's interesting to see how specificity maybe first you have a broad area of storms, and then as the model evolves, it becomes more specific to a certain storm in a certain area that could have the highest impact.
That's amazing. So when will that be something that we use operationally? Is it just weather service offices right now, or what?
Right now, it's used in an experimental mode, and it is available in real time when we run on the web. Mm-hmm. It's freely available. We also have the opportunity for feedback. We have links to surveys on our pages, and I think we're going to be enhancing that over time. In terms of actually getting into operations, I would see that probably in the mid-2020s to later 2020s. And one of the reasons for that is because we have this unified modeling thing that's going on within NOAA. And within the unified modeling approach, we're looking at using potentially one dynamic core across all scales, and that dynamic core is called FV3. And we're currently using a WRF system, which has been the community model, for the researchers and others. And so what we need to be able to do, and we're doing now with our type system, into this new core and have everything working at least at the same level, as what we're doing now, and be able to test that and move forward. So, there's a little bit of a delay because of that, but hopefully in the end, it will be a good thing.
Is there sufficient funding support to continue this project at the level you're talking about?
Yes, we're well funded. We're really thankful for that. We have base funding from Congress, so we're congressionally driven to do the work that we're doing for Warn-on Forecast.
That's really good news.
Yes.
That's
I hate to see all this effort go into a project like this, and then.
Yeah, we don't want to see it fizzle out. We want to see it, through its fruition, and that's our goal, is to help make that happen.
Yeah, I was amazed to hear Dr. Brooks say, at dinner Friday night, that we're sort of plateauing now on tornado deaths per capita, per million. And, we may be reaching this, level that we can't improve anymore without some quantum leaps and things. And so this sounds like that might be one of those things. So what about interfacing with facets? How does it work with what Alan's? I'm sorry.
Stole my question. But go ahead.
You got to just jump in.
I do.
I'm
I
like
do.
a runaway freight train.
So facets is stands for forecasting a continuum of environmental threats.
That's very good.
And
I wish I could remember that.
Okay, so how does Warn on Forecast fit with that? Well, Warn on Forecast is looking at kind of like the time and space scale that we're looking at is to fill the forecast gap between watch and warning time frame. So right now there are no models that are producing short-term, rapidly updating forecast guidance. And that's how we're testing it. And that's what we're looking at achieving. One example of that is working with the Storm Prediction Center. They are developing tools to produce 1 hour outlooks, for example, for severe weather.
I heard about that today at the talk.
Yes, and More on Forecast is one of the tools that we've tested directly in the forecast experiment, the spring forecast experiment, to do that. And we did that last year for the first time, and we did that this year. And so, you know, we can see how it's used. We can look at the verification scores for those forecasts and learn from feedback, you know, that we get this year. We had, you know, questions about what did you think about the quality of the forecast, and we directly had ratings, you know, not just on overall how good is the forecast, but, you know, with More on Forecast, we're looking for more specific information. So how good was the forecast with respect to timing? How was the forecast with respect to intensity, location, and things like that? So we're trying to get a little deeper because those are the types of characteristics that we want to do well.
So this information will go into the probabilistic hazard information, the fee that Alan was talking about today, in that period between the watch and the warning?
Yes, the types of products we're producing right now are both probabilities and percentiles. So, for example, we have updraft helicity, you know, which is a good indicator of rotation and strong updraft. So you can use that as a indicator for a mesocyclone, for example.
Right.
And so you could look at the probability, you know, of mesocyclone, looking at different thresholds of updraft helicity. And then you can also look at percentiles. So is your 90th percentile a high value that, you know, we associate with severe weather, or is it a low value? And in looking at those two products together, then you can, you know, kind of look at a quadrant, you know, where are you high probability, high impact, high probability, low impact, low probability, high impact, low probability, low impact. And so that's, you know, our goal is to provide products that allow the forecaster, you know, to gain situational awareness and be able to move forward based on those products.
Now, you did a lot of work with phased array. Still involved with that at all?
People talk about it.
Well, we had an expert last week, but I didn't get to be on the show. So how far away are we?
That's a good question. I think we are farther along than we were before. The system that I worked with was 1970s technology from a Navy ship, and we were essentially, you know, looking to show what is the capability with such a system. If you have faster scanning and you can scan in an adaptive way, what can we do with that, and how might that impact users' capabilities to understand the evolution of the storm and put warnings out a little bit earlier. So that was fun, but it wasn't state of the art. And now there is a dual polarization, dual pole phased array radar that has been installed exactly where the other radar was located, on North Base in Norman, Oklahoma. And the researchers, you know, both radar engineers, software developers, and meteorologists will be working with that system to do, you know, similar types of things that we looked at with the former instrument, but with this new information. So the dual pole information, and how does that information in you know, rapid succession of scans, how is that useful? And I know that folks who work in precipitation, microphysics, and things like that are particularly excited about that, because we know that, you know, all the different particle types and storms can change very quickly. Mm-hmm. And so they think that this technology will provide insight more insight into, the development of grapple or, hail, things like that, and also potentially lightning, etc. So I think, there's a lot of potential there. But again, this is a second demonstration phase, and we'll have to see what we learn from that.
So
that's
are you
where
giving
we
a
are
talk
now.
here this week? Or are you?
I am.
When will
Yeah.
your talk be? I have to make sure I'm in there.
Thursday afternoon.
Oh, I'm gonna be gone.
It's around
So
2.
I never leave early.
Yeah, I have Thursday talks 2 years in a row.
That's because they're trying to get a draw to get everybody to stay. They put the big hitters on Thursday
to hold the attendance.
That's right.
So, well, what I'm going to talk about though is pretty cool. I think we gave a survey to the participants at the Spring Forecast Experiment 2 years ago, and what we were interested in seeing is how do meteorologists interpret probabilistic concepts, percentile concepts, and then the combination of those concepts. So we developed an 18-question survey on those topics and used some of the output from our model just to, give them examples from which they could answer questions. So we had a mix of open-ended questions and multiple choice questions, and I will be reporting on those results on Thursday.
Can you share anything? Can you give us a little sneak preview to those of us who won't get to be here for your talk? Any little nugget for the WeatherBrains crew?
Well, at this conference, we've been talking about diversity a lot, right? That's one of the themes.
Right.
And I would say there's a diversity in understanding and interpreting probabilities, percentiles, and the combination thereof.
So what would you say to that and to us? Because a lot of times we run away from probabilities, and I personally think the public has a better concept of what they mean than a lot of other meteorologists do. What's your opinion of that?
I think that, because weather systems have uncertainty associated with them, that providing uncertainty information makes sense.
Absolutely.
And recently I was perusing the literature, and there was an article by Murphy. You remember it's statistician John Murphy, I believe was his name. And in 1998, he wrote an article on the history of probabilities versus deterministic approaches to forecasting. And he traced back that history, like the 1800s or so is when people were first thinking about uncertainty in forecasting. And what was really interesting about that is they went from that framework, again, saying, we have uncertainty, we don't fully understand these, so we need to consider that in a forecasting context. And then as people kind of gained more knowledge and information, started using models, they said, this is an exact science. We can give you an exact answer. We're going to give you a deterministic answer. And so there was a flip-flop there. And, now I think we're kind of, going back, to what people were thinking to some degree in the 1800s, although in a more sophisticated way, that we need to be taking this uncertainty into account. And I just think it's interesting that he had this idea in 1998. He said, time is ripe to do it. That was, 20 years ago? He said, we need to go and charge with this in his paper. And, now we're really charging with it 20 years later. So it's just amazing, how long it can take to push new ideas forward and make them a reality.
So probabilities are going to be really important to facets.
Yes, they are.
So,
yep. Whether it's from a model, forecast, or if it's an observation-based statistical model, I think there'll be a combination of those based on the time frame that we're talking about. So, in a shorter time frame, it's probably going to be more observation-based. Longer time frame, it's going to be model-based. And I think what's really interesting is the intersection of those two and determining kind of where's the handoff, or is it a hybrid approach? It's some time frame between those two. So there's a lot of interesting questions that need to be answered.
Well, Greg is now saying, this was the biggest NWA run we've had today. You were part of it. Is this your first one to be part of?
First time to facilitate.
Okay, you were a facilitator tonight.
Yes.
Dr. Chuck, were you?
First time for me.
Did y'all some cool things come out of tonight that you saw?
Yeah, there's always lots of ideas coming out. That's never a problem. It's just the time, talent, and dollars to be able to do it. Yeah. Right.
Well, I have to congratulate Greg and all the organizers, the facilitators, and the participants, because this is how great ideas are formed. So it's so good to see you again.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And Dr. Chuck, always good to spend time with you.
It's always good. I have to point out that I'm very proud of Pam. She was in the very first class I ever taught in Sloan.
Oh my goodness. Just
and
6 years ago. Right? Yeah, I think we're finding the fountain of youth around here. It's either in St. Louis or Pennsylvania, one or the other.
Wow, keep bringing them along. The science owes you.
Yeah. Yes, they do. And thank you for all your great participation and involvement in the NWA. You're a cornerstone of this organization, Dr. Chuck. You're even running the registration this week with Tanya and Hulda.
Give out the appropriate lanyard to me.
How come I didn't get one of those? Oh, that's what it takes. Okay.
Yes.
Good. Yeah, I understand. Well, thank you, Dr. Pam. Thank you, Dr. Chuck. Good to see you guys.
Good to talk to you. Thank you so much.
So, Dr. John?
I'm overloaded with
this has been a serious WeatherBrain crew tonight.
The science that we've been hearing tonight is just fantastic.
Well, that's why this is the greatest week of weather, I tell you. Operationally, if you're an operational meteorologist, there's no better spot to be.
And let's welcome our television viewers.
Oh, they're now.
Okay. We're hit. What's happening? We're hitting at 8:30, and we should explain for those watching on television. This is going to be a fairly abbreviated show for you because we started this evening at 7 o'clock Central Time because we are not in our traditional locations. Dr. John, Bill, and I are in St. Louis at the National Weather Association annual meeting. So anyway, just wanted to welcome our television viewers. So welcome.
That's right. So now you'll have to go back and watch the recorded show.
Right.
Because there's been more per capita brain power here tonight, James, than any show I can remember.
No, my head is spinning after all this. But no, for those watching on television, this is available in a podcast version. Most people listen to this show, but you can go back and watch on YouTube or just go to WeatherBrains.com. It'll be posted there later tonight with show notes. Brian Peters, the faithful man that's not said a word tonight. Brian, talk to us. Man, are you still okay down there?
I'm fine.
Good.
My head is spinning with all the topics you're talking about, so.
Yes, Brian and I are just soaking up the knowledge here. But anyways, it's been a great show.
We miss you, Brian.
Miss being there.
And he says he misses being there. So here's the next question. We don't know where this meeting will be next year.
No, we do not.
What's the scoop, Dr. John? You know everything.
Nobody knows.
They are holding it very close to the vest.
Yes, they are.
Well, Bill's like one of the big shots here.
They even the big shots don't know, apparently. Apparently only Janice knows. But Office Pool has narrowed it.
Yeah.
We're getting clues because we heard Pittsburgh. I think we heard Cincinnati.
Well, no. Alan Seals this morning said it's somewhere in the
southeast That's what I was getting
States.
to.
Okay.
And then we heard Birmingham, and we heard Huntsville. And he narrowed it. Somebody narrowed it down to the southeast, like
it was
you
Alan
say.
Seals. He's the president.
He's only the grand poobah of the whole deal. And so, if you've already picked Pittsburgh or Cincinnati in your Office Pool, you may be in trouble.
Yeah, you're done.
Yeah.
We had a luncheon today with 7 past presidents, and this question was asked of the executive director: "Can you tell us where we're going next year?" She wouldn't do it.
No,
she wouldn't do it.
I think you'd have to cut off her fingernails or something to get her to
They
tell
apparently
me.
haven't signed the contract, and until they sign the contract, they're not going to let them.
Well, it'll be somewhere, and wherever it is, it'll be a great event, no matter what.
We will be there.
James, it's amazing how many people knew about WeatherBrains at the event on Saturday.
No, I'm always shocked, but at the Science Center, I was stopped by dozens, literally, and I'm not exaggerating, dozens of people say they listen to the show, they appreciate the humor, the intellectual guests that we bring on, and just the fun we have here. And they were weather weenies, geeks, dweebs, nerds, dorks like us. And that crowd, I will admit, was stunning to me. I expected, maybe a few people will come, but it was just, and I think they were surprised down there at the Science Center how many people came to this thing. So that's a sign that the local people did promote it, I think.
Right.
Our friends here in television, of course, Mike Murphy and Steve and everybody at Channel 4, plus all the other stations did a great job. So, and Ginger Z loved it. She was here. She flew in Friday night, left Saturday night.
Sat on the tarmac at Newark for an hour and a half. Scott picked her up at the airport nearly 1 o'clock in the morning, and she had to be back at the Science Center at 7:30.
Right. Wow. But she had a blast. We had fun. Doing the shows for the kids. She had book signings, and
and people were lined up for the books.
There were
I felt really good about
long lines. So it was a very successful event. So thanks to all of you.
I hope you'll come back next year, James.
Well, if you tell me where it is, I mean.
Well, once we figure that out, we'll let you know.
But anyway, I just want to be sure our television viewers knew that we're in a different setting tonight, and that's why I'm not on the local television Studio A thing I'd normally be doing this time of year.
So now, are you doing the weather forecast tonight, James? Radio and
I'm doing radio, and I'm doing everything but television. So the only thing I'm not doing is television.
Will you write the forecast package for the blog?
Yes.
Okay.
I got that covered.
I thought we might be up late again,
No.
Scott.
You guys I got this. I got this.
Yeah.
But no, I wish I could just corral some of the brain power here.
Go get it, and we'll just go all night.
Somehow bottle it up and pull it out when I need it.
Yeah,
that's the thing. You learn so much at these things, and then you get into an event 5, 6, 7 months later, or maybe years later.
You remember
where some little
stuff.
trinket of knowledge that you picked up in this thing would come back to you, and that's very important.
Just that ghost satellite image that someone was showing, I think today or maybe yesterday, was just all the things.
The 20-minute time lapse.
Right. All the things that were going on there and the clues to what's happening in the atmosphere, because we have that temporal resolution on the satellite now. It's just amazing. And
1 minute resolution on this imagery.
And the other thing, there's a lot of products I don't even know that exist until I come to these things.
Well, I was honored to be the session chair for the severe weather first session today. And just the brain power in those 5 people right there was just amazing.
So it's important. And I can't come every single year, but I think it's something that's very important. And it's sad to me that some television folks are saying, my management's now saying they don't have the budget.
Right.
Can't come.
Right. I think it will pay off for them in spades if they will send their meteorologists.
Right. The knowledge that they will gather here, the networking that they can do here, the connections that they can make here, it's very important to be successful in this science and to do what we do. If you're not learning, then you're going backwards. If you are not going forward by learning new techniques that have been developed at NSSL, these other places, just listening to people go through case studies where they've gone through a big flood, a tornado, a severe thunderstorm outbreak. Listen to how they handle it, what went right, what went wrong. Some of the things that happened that aren't even on the agenda, like we had a session last night on consistency and messaging.
Yeah, talk about that for a minute, James.
This was not
get to go
part of the agenda. This was, we attempted to get influencers in a room. We call it the padded room experiment, where we lock ourselves in a padded room and we agree across the enterprise. This is private sector. You had people from AccuWeather in there. You had people from the Weather Channel. You had weather service people. You had television people, social scientists, academia, the whole gamut in there. Let's just see if we can agree on that one thing, call to action statements. What do you do when there's a tornado? What do we say? Are different stations saying different things? Is AccuWeather saying something different from the Weather Channel? If we're inconsistent, then that's going to lead to confusion. That leads to inaction. That's going to kill somebody. Mm-hmm. So can we do this? And if we can agree on one thing, what else can we agree on? So we had a really good discussion. Now, in 2 hours, you can't knock it out. You can't finalize everything.
But you can start the conversation.
Right. We started a process, and we're going to pick it back up. But I think it's – and Dr. Mussolini was in the room. I mean, you talk about influencers. I mean, this is the director of the National Weather Service. And the spirit was good. There was nobody got their back arched. Nobody's got their feelings hurt. And that's the thing we ask people to do. When you walk in this door, check your ego, your power, your title, check everything. We're going to come in here with a spirit of humility, a spirit of having a servant's heart, and let's see if we can knock this thing out, because We've had situations where in some tornado events, you're told to get in your car. You hear this: if you're not underground, you will not survive. You hear, if you're not in a FEMA-approved shelter, you won't make it. This is baffling to people. And some people will get into a small room, a closet, a bathroom. What are you supposed to do? After a while, they just throw their hands up and say, well, these people don't know what they're talking about.
If it's my time, it's my time.
That's exactly what comes out of that.
Right.
So that's the effort here. And I think it was that group needs to stay together. And let's come back on a regular basis, and maybe we can do an electronic gathering soon. And it was a good spirit in there. Nobody got their feelings hurt.
How did you address the subject of market competition, which exists?
Right. Everybody in the television business in there said, yes, it's fierce. Yeah. It is fierce. But for something like this, there should be no competition.
I agree with you 100%. Yeah.
This is something that has nothing to do. Right. This has
Right.
nothing to do with anything related to ratings or anything else. We're just telling them the same call to action statement. They will be communicated in a different way. People will find their favorite communicator on television or however, but it's got to be the same message. And everybody agreed. Everybody that was in television there, everybody within NOAA, we all agreed. Now, we had different ideas. And one of the things that I said, we have to have data. We've been telling the people these things for years and years. Do we have adequate data? So let's bring in some engineers, because we're getting into things we don't necessarily understand. And you got the American Red Cross and some of their literature. It says, go get into a car.
Yeah, we had Thomas Midland on talking about that several years ago.
Right. So, let's talk to some engineers that understand these things. And the mobile home thing.
Exactly. That's a key to that discussion. And there was a talk yesterday while I was in the mentoring. James, what came out of that yesterday?
This was the broadcaster session.
Were you in that?
Yes. I sent that thing right down the tubes. They will never invite me back to one of these things again.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. No, there are already memes floating around here. John, were you there for that session?
No, I was not. I was in the mentoring.
And listen, the first thing there's a very nice PR lady, and the first 30 minutes was talking about how nice manufactured homes are. We should never call them mobile homes.
Correct.
In 1976, they had some standards that changed. That's good information to know. But after about 45 minutes, I could tell people were getting frustrated. And I finally said, just stop the mumbo jumbo. What are you asking us to do? And that's what the meme is, stop the mumbo jumbo. Because I got my finger was going. I said, and then Kevin Laws, who was on the show tonight, he's the SUE of the National Weather Service in Birmingham.
He's excellent.
He said, you should come with me on some of my storm surveys. I challenge you. And his finger was going too. But I kind of said to Kevin, just let me get in trouble here. But I finally said, ma'am, so you're wanting us to go on television and say, in the event of a tornado warning, if you're in the Polygon, stay in a mobile home. And she said, yes. That was her message to us. And I said, man, I can't say that. I'm sorry. And that ended the session.
Wow.
So there is an organized effort to influence broadcast meteorologists on this. And Brian Peters, listen, we had Art Faulkner on the show a couple of weeks ago. And if you want to go back and review that, he was trying to convey that same message. But I got this lady to say that. So, Brian, what do you say? The mobile MHI says that you should stay in a mobile home during a tornado, a manufactured home. What do you say?
Well, the information I have, which is based on experience, I can't say those words either.
Yeah.
I can't in a good, clear conscience, because the information that I've seen and my perspective is that is not a true statement.
Right. So, but again, all that matters is data. That's all that matters is data.
Right. Yep.
That tells the story. So, show me your data. Show me. That's what we kept saying. Show me the data. Show me the data. Show me the data that proves that you're safe if you stay in a mobile home during a tornado, a manufactured home. And they go back to the talking points. And so that whole thing kind of went down the tubes at the end when I got cranky. That was the end of the whole broadcast session. Just ended that way. But that's part of the call to action statement. It is part of this discussion, and we invited Art Faulkner into the meeting.
He's here.
Right. And I told him, I'm your best friend. They are marvelous, affordable housing.
Right.
They're important for so many families. Exactly. I am a big fan of your industry, but the most important thing I do is protecting life, period. That's it. That is the number one thing I do. It's not about making you happy or selling mobile homes or selling anything. My job is to protect human life, and I'm not going to go down giving people bad advice. And so, you know, and you can schmooze me or dine me or whatever you do, I'm not going to change my mind until you show me some data. So that's where that ended. So, but again, that's part of the discussion, and we want it to be civil. We, you know,
right.
We don't want it to be to go down in flames like it did Sunday, but we want to be consistent. And again, if we can fix the call to action problem, and we always know there's going to be somebody rogue. Somebody's going to go rogue somewhere. They're going to tell people to go climb a tree or go, stick your head between your legs and kiss your, whatever. But for 99% of us, we need to be saying the same thing. Right. And I think we can do that. And then beyond that, let's go to severe weather outlooks. Within NOAA now, you've got some offices doing their own outlooks that conflict with what's going on at SPC. And these are friends of mine on both sides of the issue, but I just think there has to be some way of being consistent in messaging because it's baffling to those of us in television.
And that messaging includes consistency in color coding, which is that's another problem.
Hello, friends. Can we all pick the same crayons? How did this happen, John?
I have no clue. Because, like you said, the call to action, I think everyone agrees that should be there in terms of consistency. But then we go off in these different directions. Well, I'm going to do my thing because this is my market, or this is my CWA, and I'm going to make mine stand out among the rest. That's killing the issue.
And then, to me, the most urgent issue is local stations issuing their own warnings.
Well, private companies are doing that now too, right?
Right. And so is the watch warning system about to go down the tubes where every TV station, every private sector entity is going to be issuing their own warnings? Or if you watch Channel X, you got these warnings. Channel Y's got other warnings. And again, nobody's going to do anything. So can we fix this problem before that all begins to just get out of hand? I don't think it's out of hand yet in terms of the local television. To me, it's only just one market now where that's happening.
I know what you're saying.
But I'm afraid a consultant and these owners and the news directors, I'm not faulting the meteorologists because sometimes they're dictated to do this. And I think they're dipping their toe in the water by this code red emergency day tomorrow. Code red emergency day. When there might be some fog in the morning. And they put red all over their website, all over their apps, all over their graphics, this flashing red with the sirens going. And it's an effort to bring up numbers in an industry where the numbers are going down because people are getting weather on their phones and not on television. Right. Now, they watch us during tornadoes, but you only have so many tornado days per year. And it's an effort to keep those numbers from sagging more. But if you're going to do a code red emergency day when there's fog, what are you going to do when you've got a significant tornado outbreak? A triple code red and put up 18 sirens and take your pants down? And, I mean, what are you going to do? So that to me is they're dipping their toe in that water. That's kind of in a way starting to issue their own outlooks, which would lead to warnings. And again, a lot of this is driven by consultants and owners. And I'm hoping we can just find a solution to that and work with maybe the National Association of Broadcasters. I don't know. We need a sheriff. I mean, I'm not the sheriff. You're not the sheriff. You're not the sheriff. I don't even know who the sheriff's going to be. But we need some entity, and there's some organizations that might step in and do this. I don't know. But anyway, we had a good. It was a very good 2-hour session, very productive. So I'm very excited.
What did you think, James, about Joe Lauria from Kansas City's conversation about changing the criteria for severe thunderstorm?
He's on it. And here's the thing. I think I understand people in my market. Now, your market's different. Every market is different. But I think in my market, people don't do anything when they hear a severe thunderstorm warning. There's no action unless we really, really, really get forceful. And we don't do that often. We don't go wall to wall.
Well, how much did Kevin's comment play into that? Because Kevin Law stood up and said, what do you do for severe thunderstorm warnings? He said, well, we don't break in. And he said, people don't emphasize it because you don't emphasize it. How much truth to that you feel, Tim?
Well, I think that's a great point. He made a great point. And I don't want any more. One idea was to have a higher grade of thunderstorm warning.
I don't agree with that.
No.
I don't agree.
Have you ever seen the periodic table of watches and warnings and advisories?
They're trying to simplify it, not increase it.
We're trying to do hazardous simplification now, and by adding another one, you're going in the wrong direction. but I wouldn't mind upping that criteria. And again, it took years to get the criteria changed, but I wouldn't mind upping it again. But I think it's just going to be up to us. I think we need to go wall to wall if it's a derecho where you've got widespread 100-mile-per-hour winds coming in. That's when we do go wall to wall. We're going to have to pick and choose the ones we really hit hard. But he made a great point. And like he said, he didn't have a solution. I don't have a solution to that. But I do think there are too many. But if you note in Kevin's talk, in Birmingham, the number of severe thunderstorm warnings have come way down. And tornado warnings have come way down. The false alarm ratio is way down.
It's like
and
Kevin
the POD
said.
is actually just as high, if not higher.
And like Kevin said, we don't need fewer warnings. We need better warnings.
Yes, that's exactly the case. So all of these, this is what drives me. This is my motivation. People say, when are you going to retire? I'm not retiring. I'm just getting started, man. We got work to do. All of these issues we have to solve. And I think we can do that. I think it's within our grasp. And that's why these meetings are so important, because we're face to face and we can sit down and talk about it. Even me and the mobile home lady came up to me tonight, or the manufactured housing lady, and smiled at me. And I said, ma'am,
well, your heart's in the right place, and they know that.
Right. You don't know where I'm coming from because you're not from here. You've not walked a mile in my shoes. I don't know where you're coming from. I've not walked a mile in your shoes. You're paid to sell mobile home or manufacture. It's going to take me a while to. I said, man, I will start saying manufactured.
They become
homes.
Mobile in a tornado. That's
right,
the issue.
Right. That's Dr. John at drjohn.com with those MHI people. But I do want to revisit that later. But anyway, that's been a great session, and I hate to leave a little early. I've got to go back to work tomorrow.
I know. We're going to miss you.
But it's just been a great session. And if you're interested in weather, if you're a college student, high school student, considering a meteorology major, like with Elise, the young woman, is a great way to meet people. And they're very open. I've not met a single jerk here at this whole thing. There's probably one or two.
No, I haven't seen
you
one.
agree people are very approachable?
Absolutely.
Well, I better watch what I say. One of the AV guys is kind of a jerk, but that's all right.
That guy's got nothing to do with this.
No, he's not NWA, that's for sure.
No, you couldn't drive a 10-penny nail up one of those guys' backside with a sledgehammer.
But the guys that helped us set up tonight were super.
Right. And we would thank them for making this show possible. But yeah, again, Elise, I wanted to bring her in just to show that how far she's come since that encounter
And she has.
in Oklahoma City.
She looked like all the other kids that were walking around with their eyes about this big in Norman.
Right.
And now you can tell she's confident.
She's comfortable in her skin.
Yeah.
She's not arrogant, but she's confident in her ability.
Yes.
She knows she has a lot to learn. She knows she's young, but yet she's on an amazing track. And that's and understand, Doswell really, we rode her pretty hard down there. And
not her. You told her that the business itself is a fragile business model, and I think we all know that.
And I think in a way, Chuck almost wanted to see if she would break. I think a lot of professors do that.
That's a little bit of his modus operandi.
Right. He wants to see if he can break you. He's almost like a DI.
My very first interaction with Chuck was just like that. I was invited to give a seminar at NSSL. And I distinctly remember after the talk, here comes a guy, comes on. I love Chuck. And he comes over with his cowboy hat on, sits down on the table right next to me. And he said, so tell me about this. Do you really believe what you're talking about? And it went like that. And I guess I passed the acid test because he and I are buddies.
Yeah. No, that if he can't break you, you're his best friend. Yeah. So there you go. Well, listen, we got to wrap this thing up. Are we done here?
I think so.
So listen, for those in master control back at the television station, I know it's 8:52 local time, but we are done with the show. And maybe we can rerun this another night this week. I'll go talk with him, see if we can start it one night. So for those of you watching, you missed most of the show tonight. But again, thanks to you two guys for helping. Scott,
so good to have you back.
I'm telling you guys, I got to get back on.
You got to get back on the show. At least just once a month or so.
I agree with you, James.
Don't have to do it every week. But
you
we
are
really
a beloved person in this science, and everybody knows you and loves you, and you're a man of integrity. And so you got to come back. So
and got a great voice and great hair too.
So Brian Peters, we have no Professor Peters this week, right?
And no Tony. So no, I figured with out there at the NWA, you didn't have time for all the regular stuff.
Yeah, it's and again, I could roll it. Normally
I know you
I'm
could.
not the one out here, but I could roll it. But we decided just to, we're gonna. And I noticed a good email came in this evening. There's a lot of email that's backed up. But now Aubrey snuck out to the broadcasters.
She went to the dinner.
Yeah, she's having the karaoke and all that stuff. I said, well, all that stuff ends at 9. Aubrey, she goes, Bill, nothing ends at 9.
No, we'll be back on the regular format next week. But I guess, Brian, there's nothing happening weather-wise. I noticed we had our first snow
in Yellowstone.
Yeah, snow in parts of Montana.
10 inches on the Beartooth Pass.
Watch out this winter.
Whoa! You heard that? You heard
it here first.
I got some
woolly caterpillars or what?
This winter.
Yeah.
John, expound on that quickly.
Oh, just for a minute. I just think we're looking at some highly variable weather, and I don't think that's going to change as we move into the winter. So watch an active jet stream this winter.
Wow. You heard it first right here. Yeah, I'm seeing pictures of that snow over here. Wow.
That's crazy.
Oh, this is from 30. Farmer's Almanac predicts a whopper of a winter. So
there you go.
I don't know if I believe that, but I believe him.
Yeah, I would trust Dr. John Scullin.
Let's say John did not say that. He just said watch for active weather this winter, which can mean a lot. And I will say I'm a little concerned about the Deep South November, December tornado season.
I would be too. With an active jet stream, I would be too.
Yeah, I'm just saying, that's what we do. We watch the weather. But so, Brian, you got a pick or anything this week? Are we just going to blow the picks off too?
Well, I picked the summer weather hazards from NOAA.
Yes,
so
I knew you'd have a pick. So tell us about it.
Well, it's just, there's a lot of summer weather threats, heat, lightning, to name just a couple. And NOAA's done a very nice job of putting together a nice, concise site that has a lot of good information. So that was my pick if we needed them.
Cool. And I've got all kind of notes I've taken here. I got picks for the next year.
Yeah, there's no question.
We're going to start next week. So hang on here. Y'all hold that mic.
Absolutely.
I got to come over here and do something.
I got to see how the sausage is made. I was looking over here over his shoulder a little bit tonight. I've never seen that.
So, Brian, what we're going to do for John, Bill, and me, guess what we're going to do? We're going to blow the phone.
Okay.
I had to come over here.
Thank you so much for that.
So yeah, hit the foghorn. It's right there.
Just right there.
Yeah, just click on it. There you go. Bill Murray.
All right.
Just blew the foghorn for the first time
That's
ever.
happened to me in a while.
In fact, I got to go back over here. We're gonna wrap the show up here.
Our master engineer.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's kind of a different setup here tonight. So
finely tuned.
I think it's been our best NWA setup though.
Right. The audio has been very clean. Stepped out the show back here, and it really sounded good. So I think and even when they were talking back here in the background, it didn't bother it too bad. So we are going to wrap this up. You want to see what I do here? See that 60-second music? I hit that, bring the level down, and now the music's playing while I'm talking. You see, this is all the sound elements right here. See, I could teach Bill how to engineer this show, and I could just totally sit back and relax. But listen, typically we do the show every Monday night at 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central. Tonight we're early because of the NWA annual meeting. And we have a lot of email, but if you would like to send us one, it's email at weatherbrains.com. Aubrey, if she survives this broadcast dinner, will be back next week with a big email segment. And our social media accounts are on the website. Show notes, Brian Peters, the greatest show note man in America, has the show notes. All the links and everything about tonight will be there. So on behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew, I'm James Spann. Thanks for listening. Have a great week, and God bless. Bye-bye, everybody.
Good night.
Bye, Brian. See, now we can do a post show. Oh, bye. Yeah. See, I'm just changing sources on the camera.
Oh my goodness.
See, if only you could see, we have the camera on 2 chairs over here. We mounted 2 chairs, put the camera on top of the chair. High-tech stuff here. Thank you, guys. We'll see y'all next week. Bye-bye.